A defining trait of the early internet is its rampant use of random humor, where an object or a phrase isn't used for any narrative or creative purpose, but just because it sounds funny when said in a goofy voice. One aspect of this that I don't really understand in hindsight is the mid-2000s obsession with ducks. The word doesn't roll off the tongue, and it isn't really that strange or comedically impressive a concept as some other examples of this type of humor. I guess just at some point the internet and then society as a whole decided that the duck was funny, and it just stuck. Hey, stuck sounds like duck. I'm a genius. One of the byproducts of this duck love is these images circulating far and wide across the early internet, supposedly of the world's largest rubber duck. Most people looked at them for a bit, maybe chuckled, and then went along with their day, but when I was reminded of them a little while ago, one question was on the tip of my tongue. Is this real? And if so, why? Turns out, yeah, it's real. And what I found after answering that is apparently interesting enough to make a full video. So today we'll be talking about the internet's favorite big funny duck, and the artistic mind that made it all possible. Before we talk about the duck itself, we need to talk about the man behind the duck, Florentine Hoffman, a Dutch artist born on April 16, 1977. He graduated with an arts degree from the Christian Academy of Fine Arts in Kampen, and then a master's from the Berlin Vicensee Art Academy. He specializes in large-scale installations of everyday items with a recurring theme of animals and children's toys. That's what us in the business call foreshadowing. The duck is his most recognizable piece, but he's obviously had a much longer history making public works. There's no clear timeline anywhere, but the earliest commercial art piece I could find was when he created a 6-foot-tall metal crow statue for the 2005 Crossing Border Festival, an international literature and music festival held in the capital of South Holland. After the festival, it was moved to the Rotterdam Natural History Museum, where the staff hoped it being there would prevent real birds from flying into their windows. It didn't do that, so now it being there is just kind of funny. Some other famous pieces from Hoffman are a play space in the shape of a giant stuffed kraken, a 30-meter-long giant hungover aardvark in one of the largest zoos in Holland, and Selfie Panda. There's nothing notable about Selfie Panda. I just wanted you to also know of the existence of Selfie Panda. The goal of his art is to add a sense of childlike wonder to an otherwise boring adult place, and this exact message is what drove him to create his most infamous installation yet. The idea for the duck, aptly named Rubber Duck, came in 2000 after Hoffman took a trip to a local museum where he was particularly captivated by the landscape pieces they had on display. The whole time in the museum, he couldn't get a jingle he remembered out of his head. It was the jingle in commercials of a Dutch yogurt brand, Yogo Yogo. Yogo Yogo is best known for their infamously strange 90s ad campaign filled with surreal and weirdly horny visuals, which gave it some online virality internationally after the commercials resurfaced online in the late 2000s. A sweepstakes promoted through these commercials at the time is that one lucky viewer will win a motorboat, and they jokingly announced it by saying the kids can win a free motorboat, and as for the parents, they can win a big rubber duck. Both this and the landscapes he saw combined in his head to create the image of a giant rubber duck in the middle of a pier. And after securing funding from Yogo Yogo themselves, funnily enough, he got to work creating Rubber Duck. Fun fact, the duck seen in those images isn't actually a duck, but multiple ducks in multiple different locations. It isn't one single item, but a recurringly made creation, usually for special events. Hoffman's philosophy is that art isn't to be commercialized, so his work is really permanent displays in a set location. The many ducks ranged on average from 12 to 16 meters, with the tallest one being the duck in Saint-Nazaire, France, at 32 meters, or 105 feet high. The first of these ducks were officially unveiled in 2007 in places like Amsterdam, Sydney, and Hong Kong, and it's still brought out occasionally to this day. Hoffman says the goal of the ducks was to give a sense of childlike surrealism to the view of large cities, as well as the ridiculous image of it contrasting with the hectic and often unimaginative aura of the locations it's present in.
It means, that we're living on one planet, we're one family, and all the waters in the world is our global bathtub.
And it must must have done its job, since it became a major attraction wherever it went and has become a glorified international celebrity. Although, despite all this love, the people's thoughts on the duck is actually a lot more contentious than you may have thought. While casual tourists loved and laughed at it, art critics saw it as a mockery of the message it was trying to represent. Despite its goal of providing whimsy and Hoffman's feelings against the commercialization of his art, the idea of the duck has become a worldwide sensation regardless. It has a website with a merch store, knockoff ducks are built occasionally for events, and just the fact it's been reused so often undermines the duck's supposed message about contrasting with the specific locations it's present in. All of these show either Hoffman ignoring other parties acting against his wishes, or Hoffman himself opportunistically disregarding his philosophy. One vocal critic of the duck, Donovan Hahn, stated,
"With the repetition, it feels like it's almost become more of a meme. It feels like advertising, like the way that people like to look out for the Goodyear blimp. For me, it becomes less interesting the more he does it."
However, these criticisms are all within the art critic community, which most tourists wouldn't be thinking about when they're looking at Big Funny Duck. But it is interesting how contentious even a seemingly wholesome piece of work like this can be. While the duck existing as a headline in and of itself, there have also been multiple incidents involving the duck that have given it even more notoriety. Some of these are to be expected, like weather damaging the duck, but some of the other ones are so outrageous or unexpected that they deserve a spotlight all on their own. Even though some of the mundane ones are funny in their own right, like that time in Taiwan in 2014 where the duck just exploded for no reason. Not significant to its history, but I thought it was funny, and hey, it's my video, what are you gonna do about it, you fucking bitch? With how contentious the duck is in the art community, you would expect to inevitably see this turn into more than words, and that's what allegedly happened in 2009. It was reported that while the duck was visiting Belgium, a vandal managed to stab it over 40 times and get away unscathed. The culprit was never caught, and their motives are still unclear, but I've also never found any evidence of the story being true, and I can't find the original report of the story anywhere online. Everyone telling the story leads their sources back to this report by CNN, which is actually a 2013 report misinterpreting it being routinely deflated to repair damage in Hong Kong. I couldn't find any mainstream outlets backing up the Belgium duck stabbing, even though it's been widely believed to be true by anyone who talks about the duck's history. But like, it's widespread on the internet, so how can it not be true? Now, remember when I talked about bootleg ducks earlier? Well, one of these unapproved works actually stirred up a political controversy in Canada. The Ontario government was holding their own celebration for the 150th anniversary of Canada's founding, and to celebrate, they brought the world's largest rubber duck into the waterway between them and Toronto. However, it was later found out that Hoffman's studio had no part in the making of the duck for this tour, and they weren't even contacted by Canada at all. This also means that the cost of making the duck, roughly $200,000, was almost entirely government spending.
This giant inflatable rubber duck cost taxpayers $121,000.
This naturally caused outrage among citizens and pushback from political figures who, among other things, believed the spending could be used for something more important than Big Funny Duck. And it didn't help that the representative asked about the duck basically just said, "We thought it'd be funny, I don't know." Now, that's a bigger reaching story than you'd expect, but what's even more unexpected is that this isn't even the first time a government was in a scandal involving the duck. Okay. This one's gonna be a little jarring, but just trust me, it's gonna make sense. The Tiananmen Square massacre was an infamous event on July 5, 1989, where political protesters were murdered by the Chinese government. Information regarding the protests and the massacre have been thoroughly censored across the Chinese internet for obvious reasons, and in general, China has been notorious for censoring their media for any reason they see fit, sometimes with humorous implications. One of the most well-known censored media related to Tiananmen Square is this image, referred to as Tank Man, of a protester halting the oncoming tanks to stall the military. The Tank Man image has become an iconic symbol of this event and the Chinese people's struggle, and of course, with any serious historical image, the internet will eventually start turning it into a meme. When the duck was reported to be deflated in 2013, the hashtag Big Yellow Duck was trending on many Chinese social media platforms. There was no connection to this event from any government or any known interference, but the duck deflating was coincidentally close to the anniversary of the massacre. Both of these events in the public consciousness, one user decided to poke fun at the government with a topical posting of Tank Man, but with the tanks replaced with the duck. This is in line with the tradition of users creating memes to get around China's efforts to censor any references to the event online. Tiananmen Square, I mean, not the duck. This image spread very quickly and was censored by the platforms just as fast. The phrase Big Yellow Duck was soon banned off of most sites, and any images with the duck in reference to the image or the massacre were taken down as well. This is most likely the most well-known story surrounding the duck, since the thought of a government scrambling to censor this of all things is insane and hilarious. So now that we're finally done, I can safely say that the world's largest rubber duck had a lot more backstory to it than I anticipated. If you were to take anything from this video, it's that everything has a story, even things that you barely remember or only think about for a few seconds. When I first saw the images of the duck, I just thought it was made by some company as a publicity stunt and moved on with my day, but looking into it, no. It may seem like a strange topic to delve into, especially for my channel, but I've learned that the more obscure things lead to the biggest and most interesting stories. I sort of intended this video to just be a bit of filler between bigger projects, but it turned out to be as fleshed out as a normal video. And I think that just goes to show that everything that you see has a process attached to it, and some of those might have interesting hurdles or interesting trains of thoughts that went into making them. I'm starting to learn that just the dumbest topics tend to make for the most fun videos for me to make, so I hope you enjoyed learning about Big Funny Duck in this little retrospective, and I'll see you all in the next video.